Hi, guys. I'm excited to be doing this with you all today. If you are watching, please say hi. I love to interact. I at the last minute was like, oh, I should do an intuitive card pull. I've got my little deck right here next to me, and so at the end we will do that. So as you're watching, let me know if you would like that by just saying intuitive card pull in the comments, and we'll make sure that we do one for you around your feminine fire. So today, you guys, we're talking about your fire is feminine and what your feminine fire is and what kind of blocks us, comes unhinged, prevents us from feeling like we can really be ourselves with regard to our feminine fire today. And I feel like this topic is extremely pertinent right now for a lot of different reasons. But I have to just start with this. And you may have seen, I've shared some posts about this, but recently I've been doing some research in my field around feminine energy. So I am a feminine energy and polarity expert as well as an intimacy expert. And I touch on all things to do with leadership and masculine feminine energy and intimacy, like all the things there. And so I started doing some research in around feminine energy. I don't do that very often because I just share what I feel like divinely guided to share, and I don't really look to the left and to the right. And when I did, I was horrified. I had forgotten. It hasn't changed since I first felt desperate to understand my masculine and feminine energy and started searching. I just got disconnected from what that felt like. It was so confusing. I felt so confused at the beginning of my journey because there were so many people using this conversation around feminine energy as just another set of rules and boxes for women to put ourselves into. And they are rules and standards, I guess, that actually have us denying parts of who we are, big parts of who we are. I would even say vital parts of who we are. How difficult is that? You learn about this thing, you realize there's something missing, and then there's so many conflicting messages. It almost was like, and that's not to say, I'm not trying to sit here and say I'm the only person that knows about this, like, and knows, like, true alignment with masculine, feminine energy, anything like that. I'm just saying there's some really loud voices out there. And I'm curious if you've seen this and if you've felt confused too. I'm one of the voices that you listen to, or you wouldn't be here in this group, right? And so among me and other voices, have you found some confusion? Because some of the groups I'm a part of, and some of the TikTok accounts that I see, and these kinds of things are just promoting such a small version of who a woman can be. And it's a shame because it has parts of the truth in it. Things like play and softness and pleasure. I see some women just promoting these things as if that's all we're meant to do or be. I mean, I even have seen things like, the hobbies you're supposed to be engaged in is like sewing and piano playing and etiquette, and it's just so weird to me. Like, what on earth? It doesn't really have anything to do with true feminine energy or divine feminine at all. And then there's this other group, which I probably resonate a bit more with their message, but maybe not necessarily always the execution, where it's like they're covered in tattoos and half of their head is shaved or their whole head is shaved, and they have this image of like rebel, and they're like, the feminine is about fire and the feminine roars and the feminine doesn't follow anybody's rules and doesn't fit into anybody's boxes. And like, all of that is true. And it's missing. They're both on like opposite sides of the pendulum. It's missing this like harmony within. And more than anything, I think it's causing us to bypass who we really are. It's loud, and both sides cause us to bypass who it is that we really are. So I felt like it was very important and pertinent for me to share this message today. And I'm just curious, have you seen that? Have you felt some of that confusion as you have tried to navigate this space? Say hi if you're watching. Even replay, you can hashtag replay or just say I'm watching in the replay, and I'd love to come back and comment on your questions or thoughts. If a question or thought pops into your mind as I share something, or something resonates with you, whatever, share it in the comments, because I love to engage with you guys in this. All right, so that's a mess. It's just a whole dang mess. The most important thing we can do is pair this conversation with intimacy. Intimacy. You have the formula for your divine feminine. Only you. I also have heard of energy healers who will tell you, like, this is the percentage masculine and feminine that is your ideal percentage. Well, guess what? I don't even think that matters, because I think it changes day by day. For someone to come to me and say, you'll be in most flow and alignment when you're 77% feminine and 33% masculine. That might be true right now in this moment, but we all go through cycles and seasons in our lives. We have menstrual cycles that cause us to change and fluctuate how we show up. We have the seasons and cycles just of the weather. And then we have, oh my gosh, we have so many cycles, right? Hunger cycles, cycles with our family, cycles in our relationships, cycles with our sex drive. Even then you add things like the nature of, for instance, you're grieving right now, you just lost a relative or something. That's going to put you into a whole different cycle. You had a giant launch of something, or you spoke on stage for the first time. That's putting you into a whole different cycle. Like, everything we're doing puts us in these different cycles and seasons. So put ourselves in a box and say, now you're going to have to measure and damper and weigh yourself all the time to see if your masculine and feminine is in balance. It's just total crap. Are you guys with me? Are we on the same page here? Besides, even if I did know that, how would I maintain this exact balance? The problem is, we haven't figured out how to take off those masculine lenses as we look at the conversation around masculine and feminine energy. We're looking at it and we're thinking, how can I measure this? How can I put this on a scale? How can I master this? How can I make order and systematize this thing? All of that is masculine energy. If we take off the masculine lenses and we just look at it and go, you know what? Maybe this is something completely different. Maybe I'm not even sure what this is, and I can just step into the unknown and start listening to my heart. Literally, that is the key. And that is what I do with my clients every day. Like, I'm not here to tell you how to live your life or who to be or what to do. For sure, I share patterns that I see people succeeding in their relationships, in their business, etc. But at the end of the day, it's like, what resonates for you? And how can we peel away all the layers that prevent you from doing what feels like it's most in alignment for you? That's what we need on this planet. Okay, I'm gonna check back in here. We're way more than just soft and sexual and pleasure. Yes. And then to speak to the paradox of that, Angelique, invoking our soft, invoking our sexual, invoking our pleasure have been tremendous tools on my journey. It's just not all there is to us, right? All right, so let's break this down around feminine fire. So the first thing, that we had to get past all that mumbo jumbo, because the reality is our fire is feminine. It actually is part of feminine energy. Feminine energy is emotive, expressive. It's not consistent. It's not predictable. It's not measurable. It's not something you can put a box around. It's not. So when I talk about feminine fire, let me just break down what I am meaning by that. I'm meaning your anger, your passion / inspiration / drive, right? So that that thing in you that literally feels like fire, and you're like, I have to do this thing, and you get so into it, and you're taking steps, and you're creating, and you're in that space, right? So your anger, your passion, your pleasure, which is your ability to be in sensation, to be sensual, to be to choose enjoyment, to follow what brings you joy, and to follow your heart's desire, your truest heart's desire. So that's your pleasure, right? Even of course it pertains to sex, and you know, knowing your orgasm and knowing what brings you to deeper states of pleasure, all of that. And then the last one is your power or influence or significance. So your anger, passion, pleasure, and power. Anger, passion, pleasure, and power. Okay. So what the first thing again we had to get past is that is all feminine. It's all feminine. Do we bring in masculine aspects to help support different aspects of this? Yes. Like, is there a flow of masculine and feminine within each of these? Yes, there is. But by nature, these are feminine things. And also inherent to our collective is a denial of women expressing any of these, right? Anger, passion, pleasure, power. Inherent in our collective is this kind of shame for any of those expressions. That just makes me sad. Doesn't that just feel sad? Like, that's sad. These are like natural parts of us. And when we were little girls, we never held back any of these parts of us. Anger, passion, pleasure, power. Like, I was such a hooligan, and I just did all the crazy things. And when I was mad, I flung myself to the ground and expressed my rage, and then moved on straight to pleasure. Like, whatever I wanted, the candies that I wanted, or the things that brought me joy, or the friends I wanted to be with, or the water towers I climbed, or the deserts I ran through with bare feet. Literally, I was a wild child. And you were a wild child too, your own wild child. Like, she knew these were just parts of her. And then at some point it hit her. She wasn't supposed to be like that. Gosh dang it. And I think of my own daughters, and I'm like, am I doing that to them? Because we still live in this society, right? Oh, I don't want to do that to them. So that is an obstacle for us. I want to break down what are some of the other obstacles that show up for us around this fire aspect of us. What makes it tricky? What prevents us from being in it? All of these kinds of things, right? And so I think that it helps us first to go to, what are examples of each of these where you have seen negative outcomes, right? Like, there is some logical stuff where I've seen someone in anger and I've seen negative outcomes. I've seen someone in their passion, for example, myself, like, I can get so deep into my passion, it immediately turns into toxic masculine energy. I stop eating, I stop taking care of myself, I start biting off anyone's head who comes in to interrupt me, right? Like, so we can see where some of that passion can take a turn. Pleasure. We all know people who have followed pleasure so much that they, you know, are now have addictions or things like that, right? Or they now are engage in dangerous sexual behavior. Gosh, for heaven's sakes. I mean, I belong to a church where it's like, pleasure is the devil. It's not the devil. Pleasure's not the problem. It's just not understanding this in ourselves, right? But boy, oh boy, we all know that pleasure can lead to dangerous things. It can. And then power or influence or significance, for heaven's sakes. Like, gosh, our culture is just plagued with that kind of thing, right? I'm really trying to grow my TikTok account, and so that's why I keep getting these references from TikTok, but I just got onto the platform and I'm exploring it. But on TikTok recently, I saw these two influencers going at each other's throats, and it was so yucky to me. Like, they were sharing each other's videos and then like doing the commentary about how crappy what that person had to say was, and they were back and forth, and that's a great example of, like, using your power and influence for a negative outcome, creating a negative outcome. And certainly we know lots of leaders and things who have used power and influence in negative ways. So I think that's probably like the surface reason. You all agree? Like, that's there. It's there. It's like, wait a minute. Am I allowed to have pleasure? Because I thought that was bad. And am I allowed to express anger? Because I've only seen that bad. Am I allowed to really follow and pursue my passions? Because that ends up taking up a lot of space for other people in ways I should be serving other people. And I've seen power kind of bad. I'm not so sure. Maybe that means I'm not supposed to have even my own personal power. And we might not be saying these things consciously, but unconsciously that's working in the background against us. So we've all seen there can be negative outcomes to this, right? So then what is the positive? What is the outcomes that this could produce that we do love? And that's really, that's what we need to focus on more than anything, because we don't have a lot of healthy, positive examples of women who seem to be very free and who are in all of themselves, whole, not held back, not happy because they're like doing the system really well. They've mastered perfectionism on somebody's scale, but like free, happy, whole, like connected, in love with life, and not held back in any way, right? We don't get to see enough examples of that. And that's a huge part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Not that I am perfect in that either. What even is perfection when it comes to that kind of way of being? But it's important. Like this topic matters so much because most of the women today are lost. We're lost. We're all looking for, like, none of it quite fits the mold. Like, who are we meant to be, right? Do you resonate with that? I can feel the energy of some of you watching right now, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can tell that's hitting home. Because so many of us have been asked to sacrifice parts of ourselves, whether it was conscious or unconscious, and we have put away these parts of ourselves deep in the recesses of us. And I was woken up in the night a couple of nights ago as I was thinking about doing this training. I was woken up in the night with this imagery from this old farmer. I used to go, and my uncle was really good friends with this man. He lived on this farm in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. And we went out to visit him one day because we wanted to ask him some questions about how he was running his ranch and stuff like that. And we have a bunch of stuff. We have goats and chickens, even though we live in the city. Anyway, we went to his house, and one of the things that he showed us was his prosciutto. I had no idea that he was like a prosciutto guy. And it was something that he took great care in. And I'd known this man forever, and I had no idea that he knew so much about prosciutto. And so he took us from his living room down in his little farmhouse, down all these hallways and stairs into the cellar, where he had all this prosciutto hanging. And we went from, what was super hot outside. It was a hot summer day. And as we went down, it got colder and colder into this little cellar where it was just cold. And there were cement walls, and then he had food storage and different things that they had canned from their garden and all kinds of. That's like totally up my alley. I don't have a cellar yet, but one day I will. Anyway, I was thinking about this man, and this just like connected to me that like these are the parts of us. We don't realize that, like our anger and we carry shame around our pleasure and our passion and our power, and we don't realize as we've shoved it down into the cellar, we were actually preserving some of the most precious parts of us, like our prosciutto, you know. Prosciutto, if you don't know what it's like to make, I don't know all the details, but it takes a long time. It's a lot of care and preservation. It's super thinly sliced meat, and they have to do all this salting, and they have to have all these perfect conditions. It was like his most prized possession that he literally spends a lot of time and touch and care going back and checking on his prosciutto. And like that's what our fire can be, is for many of us. It's this thing that we've tucked way down in, even the parts of us that we think are ugly, or the parts of us that we think are our weaknesses. They're actually this precious thing deep down in the cellars and recesses of us. And it behooves us to first and foremost become our own advocate, that like those are the precious parts of me, and then surround ourselves with people who say and believe that too about you and about themselves, so that we can bring forth our prosciutto and share it together. And I really felt like that was the message that needed to come through today above all. Um, these are the most precious parts of us. We just haven't seen examples of how it can be done well. Okay. I didn't intend to get so emotional in this, but I'm not surprised I am emotional. Actually, I want to check in really quick with the comments. I'd love to hear, you know, what you guys think and feel about that, about your own precious parts of yourselves that you've put in the cellar. The number one problem that whole cellar analogy illustrates, and this, I want you to get this very clearly, this is the core issue. Even though you might think, yeah, but you haven't talked about my partner and how he responds to my fire, and right? The core issue for us, and the part that we can do something about, is that we haven't owned our fire. We haven't given ourselves permission to study it, to call it in, to receive it, to embody it, to bring it forward, to purify it. That is our core issue. It's up to us first. We're the gatekeepers of that cellar. We have the key, no one else. We're the gatekeepers. Okay, that is the core thing. So if this is really resonating with you, then I'm saying to you, as you plan out and map out your year, it would really support you to bring in, like, I'm going to explore what my fire is. I'm going to explore these parts of myself, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, journaling, whatever it takes. And I'll talk in a little bit about the program that I'm running that would be very supportive for you around this. We are the gatekeepers, okay? Let's talk now about some of the other obstacles, particularly partner support. So I, ran a poll of sorts by making a Facebook post here in the group, and saw that a lot of you have had the experience that I also resonate with, where your partner does not accept your fire. So you come forward with something. It could even be that you're just super like giddy and thrilled out of your mind about something that has happened, or you feel really excited because you just had like a breakthrough. You had some inspiration come through, or you've been doing some deep healing work, and some divine truth has distilled into your bosom, and you want to share with him, but it's not going to be received well. So the first obstacle around sharing with our partners is that it's vulnerable to be seen, right? Like, it's vulnerable. It takes risk because we don't know how they're going to respond. And so there's that vulnerability piece, right? Just being exposed, whether it's our joy or our like terror or our anger or our shame or our passion or our whatever, right? But then there's this other layer of having to explain some of the things that it almost can take more work to try to explain. And the phrase mansplaining came to mind, but it's the opposite. Mansplaining is supposed to be like, for his stupid wife, he has to like take time to explain to her. It's a terrible, derogatory, funny phrase. I was thinking this is like a woman splaining, like anything to do with inspiration or woo woo or how we see we're going to change the world or anything we're doing. We're speaking from our heart or from our feminine energy. It's like, we don't want to have the woman splain. Am I right, you guys? And that shows up. So then maybe we just don't share uh our vision or our breakthrough or etc or even our anger, right? Because it does take some explaining. I know that when I go to show my husband my anger, my shame, or even my tears, a lot of times I have to preface with, I don't need you to do anything about this. I just want to be seen in this. And I'm okay with having to say that because I've learned that that actually creates a really beautiful experience for both of us. But if you haven't tried that before, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to explain. I don't want to have to do that. And then the next kind of obstacle with a partner is we can be downright rejected. He either will shut down, like you're talking, and all of a sudden it's like, hello, are you there? Like, where did you just go? He goes quiet, or he outright stops you, starts to talk over top of you. It seems like he can't really handle what you're saying. Or worst case scenario, he literally shuts you down or walks away and says something like, I'm so excited. I'd love to go to Puerto Rico, just walk on the beach. Wouldn't that be nice, honey? And he's like, that costs a lot of money. Boom, walks away. Like, oh my gosh, it just is brutal to the spirit of the feminine energy. It's brutal. It breaks our heart, doesn't it? Or worse, he doesn't want to stay in that space at all. These are really real issues, and they come up all the time. And I have seen in my own life and in many clients' lives where these obstacles can be overcome. But I've also seen scenarios where they can't because our husbands, our partners were raised in the same society that we were. And so they may have some deep conditioning around how women aren't supposed to act that way, or women aren't supposed to da 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 da, whatever it is, right? And that's super, super painful. I think that that takes a lot of deep inquiry around really what serves you, and if this marriage really serves you, and really looking and weighing being with somebody like that who really cannot and refuses to grow at all with you. There's some deep questioning there. But I have seen many times where couples are able to work through this. In my own marriage is one of those examples. My husband's never been outright rude. Very rarely. Like I could count on one hand that he said something that was like, that was so mean. I can't believe you said that. Like he just doesn't. He's a nice guy. We got to work. Well, that's the part we're working on with him. It's like, I'd rather you be a little bit more rude and just tell me what you think. That's my kind of husband. He would shut down, he would withdraw, he would pull away, or even worse, he would kind of get resentful and stuff like that. Not really saying how he thinks and feels, but now all of a sudden he's acting different towards me, and I can tell it brought up stuff for him. And it's taken a lot to bridge that gap, but it absolutely is bridgeable. What I would say to that is, and I can't give you specific how-tos without knowing your exact scenario. And I don't say that as like a veiled sales tactic or anything like that. Like truly, I think that relationship experts who sit up in expert positions and then tell you these formulas are setting you up for failure, because those formulas are only going to work for a certain percentage of the population. And then you go try the formula and then it doesn't work for you. And then you draw conclusions about what that means about yourself, about your marriage. You may even divorce because, like, well, we did what the Gottman Institute told us to do and it didn't work, so we must not be compatible. So I try to really avoid some of that, like, this is the way, and because I don't want to set you up for failure. But when our men can see that these are the parts of us that make us the partner that they really want, then they're more inclined to really support this. They need help too. And maybe that sounds like patriarchal mumbo jumbo to you, but the reality is, again, they were raised in the same society we were. So they need a little bit of support and reframing and understanding around this. It's very likely that our husband hasn't seen someone in anger in a safe way. Men in anger and the way men display anger can oftentimes be even more toxic than what they've seen from women expressing anger. So they may have seen, really toxic and painful displays of anger. They may even be afraid of their own anger, which therefore makes them afraid of your anger. And they're certainly not going to say that out loud, right? Passion. All of a sudden they're jealous. All of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute. I've never seen you pursue me the way you're pursuing that business, right? Honestly, what is the root of that? That is them, like, saying, like, do you still like me? What about me? Right? But when they deliver it all yucky, it's hard for us to hear that message. If we could just see past and hear their heart, it's like, oh, then we can give some reassurances. If we can get kind of underneath, what is it that's causing that? Pleasure is super, super fascinating to me. And I think this one is just rooted in conditioning. Like, women aren't supposed to be loud. We're not supposed to laugh too loud. We're not supposed to enjoy ourselves too much or whatever. And what I always tell, especially when I'm working with couples, what I'll tell the husband is like, do you not realize that is the exact same energy that is going to unlock her in the bedroom? Like, hello, it is. Same with anger. Like, no one makes that connection, but that's the energy that unlocks us when it comes to our sexuality and our creativity and our pleasure in the bedroom with our partner. And so when he can kind of see that, it's like, oh, wait a second. I don't know why I thought that was bad, but let me try and reframe that, even though it might make me uncomfortable because she's laughing loud or she's telling a loud story or whatever it is, right? Uh, Gosh, you've probably heard me tell a story about eating a mango, and CJ and I were first, I don't even know if we were married yet or if we were just still dating, and I was eating this mango, and of course I'm like in honeymoon phase with him, just in total bliss, and I'm just so present to the mango, and I'm making all these like moaning noises and everything, and I look over and he's laughing at me, and I shut down my pleasure for the next like 5 years. No joke. Like, it was like, don't let him see, don't let him see. And I've heard from so many clients, because this isn't the kind of thing you share just, on the first meeting. This is something that they share after several meetings with me of like, I hold back in an orgasm because I don't want to be that seen. I'm afraid. Like, what do I look like? How is that being received to him? It's too exposing. It's too vulnerable. Right? So these are the things that we're carrying around pleasure, and certainly power. There's a lot of dynamics with that. So I hope that as I've talked through some of the scenarios and the stories, I want you to just take a moment and drop into your own inner wisdom and go, what from this conversation has been meant for me? And does a solution come forward from my own inner wisdom, or something that I have shared, or an example that I've given? So one strategy you might try in this is to write him a letter. now that you've heard all of this, whatever insights you've had, write him a letter about your anger or your passion or your pleasure, or, you know, ways you've stepped into power and influence, and tell him how it has felt, and tell him what you really want. So write the letter, tell him how it has felt, tell him what you really want. What do you really want? There was a beautiful experience, one of the first times I ever let CJ really fully see my anger. I was so mad about something, and it made sense to me. Not only had he not seen healthy expressions of anger, he hadn't seen my healthy expressions of anger. I used to just like lay into him. And when anger is directed at someone, that's an unhealthy expression of anger, and it's not good for the person expressing it, or obviously for the people receiving it. So we had to rebuild trust that I was experiencing a new way of being with my anger, an empowered way where I was no longer a victim to it. And I wanted him to be able to be with me in that, to not have to separate from me or break our intimacy and our connection just because I was feeling mad. And this is something we're still working on. His knee-jerk reaction is to go away when I'm mad. And so we've come a long way. We really have. It's been beautiful. The first time I said to him, I just need you to see me in this. I don't need you to say anything or do anything. Just don't look away. And we were in our room. I closed and locked the door, and I was just yelling, and I was hitting the bed. I was saying all the F words, and I was screaming, and I was crying. And then I just collapsed and looked over at him, and he was with me in the whole thing. And it was so healing. And I'm pretty sure we had sex after that. It was so healing. It was like, oh my gosh, thank you. You still love me. You're still here. You're in the room still. It was glorious. So you know, so maybe you try writing a letter, but here's the reality: is things like this take time. And so I'm going to move into the phase to be able to do some card drawings, and then we'll wrap up. Let's see, at let me check my time. I haven't even been looking at the time here. We will wrap up. I've got like a couple of minutes actually. And then I'll do some card pulls for you guys. So I'm just gonna do the few that said that they wanted it. But give me just a second here. Okay. But I want to share with you guys the reason that I created I created a program, and the reason I created this program, I created it nice and long. It's a 10-month container working around these same concepts: the divine feminine, your intimacy, deeply standing in and being in yourself. And I made it 10 months long, and I really debated, like, that might be hard for people to swallow, but here's the reality: is these things take time. And even, you know, it takes time to, you go through this excitement and almost like a honeymoon period with something that you've learned, some concept that's new to you that you're ready to implement, and then you start to run into roadblocks with it. And that's where you need some support, some guidance to go back to yourself when your conditioning starts to kick in, not in like the honeymoon phase. The honeymoon phase is great, you're learning, you're taking it all in, but then it's like, oh, it's when I start to then bump up against these self-sabotages and these patterns that have existed for so long, that's when you really need the support. And so it's called the Authentic Feminine, and I would love to talk to you more about that. It's also, it has a group space included in it, because I know that women in sisterhood, this is how we liberate ourselves. We need to link arms, and we need that energy to bounce off. So anyway, obviously that's something we can talk about. Just shoot me a DM if that's something you want more information around. So the question is, what is going to allow And just give these a shuffle. What is going to be the next step to express her feminine fire in ways that are beautiful and freeing? That's our question. Ooh, okay. So these cards are really fun. They just have words and images. They're from my mentor, Morgana Allen McCabe, and you can only get them. It's called the Unbecoming Oracle deck, and you can only get them by taking one of her courses. I love them because there is no book. This is it. So it really forces you to like deepen your intuition. So utopia is the word that comes forward, and immediately the message that comes forward is, oh, this is really good and deep. It's the utopia that prevents you from expressing your feminine fire. And it's also creating a new ideal around what utopia actually looks like that will allow you to fully express your feminine fire, meaning studying the divine feminine, studying Heavenly Mother, studying expressions of the feminine through women that have existed throughout time, throughout history, so that you gain a new understanding about what this looks like. And primarily what's coming to mind is church imaging around women is just women who are flowy goddesses, right? Like they're all grace, all light, all radiance. And that is absolutely an aspect of it, but it only gives us half of the picture. Like, what about the destruction? What about the fire? What about the shadow side? What about the dark feminine? What about the sorceress? What about all of those things? And how do I find a framework around those things? So that's your reading, dear. I'd love to hear how that resonates for you. This is so fascinating. These ones that are coming through right now are so interesting. This is the oppression card. Whew. So you ready for this one? I'm gonna just come straight as I'm receiving it. This one goes right back to what I was talking about earlier, that there is a suppression from you initially around being able to fully release all the parts of you, but it actually comes from an oppression from society. It comes from all the conditioning that you have ever received that has told you who you're supposed to be. And what I love about this card and what stands out to me right now is this horse looks like he's running free. He doesn't look like he's inhibited, except for maybe by kind of, some of these flowers. The flowers can be beautiful and they can also hinder. And so it's going in and looking at what are the oppressions that have been there and being able to be with the paradox of how it has beautifully shaped you into who you are, and also the aspects that you can release that no longer serve you. Now that you are grown up, you are a sovereign woman, you can decide what kind of woman you want to be, being able to go, okay, those were beautiful, and I'm grateful that this formed me into the person that I am today, and also I can release some of those things. Looking at, like, I always encourage women just to start with the question in journaling, what have I believed it meant to be a good woman? Or what have the women in my life taught me that it has meant to be a good woman? And I use that very specifically, good woman or good girl, even because we have so much conditioning just around the phrase good girl and good woman. So you get to kind of like lay those statements out like, oh, okay, like she's supposed to do this, she's supposed to do that. It's actually really different based on like your upbringing and who you were around and your teachers, etc. And then decide for yourself, like, oh, does this feel like something I still believe in, like that my house needs to be perfectly clean, or that I need to host by having every little detail laid out, or that I, whatever the things are, um, that I'm not allowed to laugh too loud, or whatever it is, and just beginning that work, and then beginning to consult your own inner wisdom with, what do I actually believe? What do I actually want to define me? Okay. So let's see. I think these were the two that said so at the beginning, and I'm sorry that I can't do more. Because I gotta go. Actually, I had to text the gal and say I'm running a few minutes late, but last one. My friends, thank you so much for being here with me today. This has been beautiful. Again, thank you for participating. I hate talking into a void. I think that, I don't know. I go back and forth. The whole time I was like, I should just host this as a Zoom and bring you all in with me so I can see your faces and stuff. But I hope that you've gotten something of value out of this, and I do hope that, if this has resonated with you, that you'll consider coming into this group container. It's a hybrid of group and one-on-one, and allowing for some deeper transformation and support around intimacy and the divine feminine, because it's so needed right now in our world. In order for you to bring forward your feminine fire in a way that is beautiful and freeing, we've got the mirror. These cards so beautiful. They're so cool. So what comes through right now is there's like all these images around like darkness and not being okay with darkness. Our society is not okay with darkness, and it's so it's maddening. Like, if someone has darkness and oftentimes exposes any of that darkness that's in them, like our doctors and everything are so quick to just be like, slap some medication on that, because that's not like acceptable. That's not allowed. It reminds me of The Giver. Have you guys seen The Giver? Where they take medication every day so that they won't have any feelings. They'll just be like flat. And I'm like, that is such a parallel to our society, because even though we're not forced to take medication yet for it, we are expected to be that way. Like, don't be too happy, don't be too sad, like don't get too passionate, don't get too angry, like just stay in the middle. That's where you're meant to stay. And so what's coming through around all of this is that there's some darkness for you that you have been facing, and I can feel that it's been really heavy. And like the beauty in it, the beauty, that is all there is. There is beauty in your darkness. Maybe no one's ever said that to you, but to use your darkness like you're looking in a mirror and going, what is beautiful? Where is the beauty in this? If nothing else, just to simply know and relate with the darkness in other people. Like, start there. And there's something, like, I keep hearing like resentment or something. So there's something about like resentment, or maybe some feelings that feel maybe even uglier than some of like the sadness or even depression or some of those things, where it's like, I don't like the way I feel. Like, I don't want to feel this way towards other people. That's what I'm hearing. I don't want to feel this way towards other people. And so going, what is, if this is a mirror for me, this is the question you need to ask yourself, is what is missing for me in this situation? And this continues to be reflected back to me because I'm not experiencing what I need. I'm not experiencing whatever it is, the value, if you will, or the feeling that I'm wanting. And that's why this thing keeps being reflected back to me. So when you can identify what is missing for me, in this. When you can identify what that thing is, then give it to yourself in copious amounts. It might be love, it might be acceptance, it might be admiration, it might be cherishing, it might just be like honor, respect. I'm not sure what it is, but when you identify what it is, then give that to yourself in copious amounts and tell yourself, I see this is a need that you have. Thank you for mirroring this to me by showing me jealousy or resentment or, some of these shame even, so that I could learn how to care for myself. Okay. All right, my loves. Thanks again for being with me. If this has resonated with you and you had some thoughts that were maybe too deep, you didn't really want to share them in the comments, but you want to be witnessed, like shoot me a DM. I would love to hear and love to hold space for you. And again, I'll put that link in the comments so we can talk some more about this upcoming program. We're starting soon. Bye.